Nosy neighbor kept complaining about my overgrown lawn. Fine, I'll make it a jungle. We moved into our house a few years ago. It's a nice place, but the yard was, well, let's just say it needed some love. We're not exactly lawn people, more of the let nature do its thing type. We mowed occasionally, but honestly, we preferred wildflowers and clover to perfectly manicured grass. Enter Mrs. Higgins, our next door neighbor. From day one, she was particular. Her lawn looked like it belonged on the cover of Better Homes and Gardens. Ours, not so much. It wasn't a disaster, just, natural, a bit shaggy. Happy bees, happy butterflies, maybe a dandelion or two enjoying life. The complaint started subtly. "Oh, your lawn is looking green," she'd say with a pointed look at her own pristine, chemically treated carpet of grass. Then it escalated. Passive-aggressive comments about property values and keeping up appearances. Finally, she took the plunge and outright told me my lawn was an eyesore and bringing down the neighborhood. Now, I'm generally a pretty chill person, but something about her tone just rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't just about the lawn, it was the sheer entitlement, the my way or the highway attitude. So petty revenge mode activated. I decided if she wanted lawn care, I'd give her lawn care. I stopped mowing the front yard entirely. I let everything grow and grow and grow. The wildflowers went wild. The clover became a lush carpet. We even got some cool tall grasses popping up. It started to look less like a lawn and more like a meadow. Mrs. Higgins was apoplectic. I could see her glaring from her perfectly edged flower beds. She'd even start weeding the edge of her lawn that bordered my property, sending judgmental glances my way. The HOA blessed their cotton socks and sent a polite but firm letter about lawn maintenance. Okay, fine, I'd maintain it, petty revenge style. I went out and bought wildflower seeds, packs and packs of them. Every variety I could find. I scattered them liberally across the now very much a meadow front yard. Then I bought a few strategically placed garden gnomes and some solar-powered fairy lights. Now, instead of an overgrown lawn, we have a charming, whimsical wildflower garden. But it's buzzing with life, it's colorful, and it drives Mrs. Higgins absolutely insane. The HOA can't complain. It's technically maintained. And honestly, I kind of love it. The bees love it, the butterflies love it, and I get a little chuckle every time I see Mrs. Higgins' face twitch when she walks by. Who knew petty revenge could be so flowery? Hogs it. This is peak petty revenge, turning neighborly complaints into a beautiful, bee-friendly middle finger. If you want more satisfying stories like this, hit that subscribe button right now. Office lunch thief. Thought they were sneaky? Think again. For months, someone in my office had been pilfering lunches from the communal fridge. Not every day, not every week, but often enough to be incredibly annoying. Sandwiches, leftovers, even a yogurt cup once vanished into thin air. We'd all started labeling our food more aggressively, writing our names in giant letters, even adding little notes like "do not eat." Chiloisim contains extreme laxatives, purely for psychological warfare, of course. Nothing worked. The lunch bandit was relentless. The office manager sent out a passive-aggressive email about respecting colleagues' property. Still nothing. People started hiding their lunches in drawers, carrying them around. It was becoming ridiculous. I was determined to catch this culinary criminal. So I set a trap, my weapon of choice, the spiciest chili I could possibly make. I'm talking ghost peppers, habaneros, the works. A fiery, volcanic concoction that would make a dragon sweat. I made a big batch, put a generous portion in a clearly labeled container, "Do not touch, experimental chili," and placed it front and center in the fridge. The next day I arrived at work with a mischievous grin. Lunchtime rolled around and I casually checked the fridge. My chili container was gone. Yes, the bait had been taken. I waited patiently for the fireworks to begin. About an hour later, the office erupted in a series of coughs, sniffles, and panicked gasps. Someone was clearly suffering. I subtly scanned the room, trying to pinpoint the culprit. Then I saw him. Gary from accounting, usually a picture of buttoned-down corporate conformity, was pale, sweating, and fanning himself with a file folder. His eyes were watering, and he looked like he was on the verge of spontaneous combustion. He made a beeline for the water cooler, chugging glass after glass like he was trying to extinguish a fire in his stomach. He even grabbed a carton of milk from the fridge, ironically next to where my chili had been, and gulped it down. The spectacle was glorious. Later that afternoon, Gary sheepishly approached my desk. He didn't confess outright, but he mumbled something about accidentally taking the wrong lunch, and wow, the chili was intense. He looked genuinely miserable. I played it cool, acting surprised and concerned, while internally I was doing a victory dance. The lunch theft stopped immediately. Gary started bringing his own lunch from home, always something bland and beige, and every time I microwaved my normal, non-lethal lunch, I'd catch him eyeing it nervously. Justice served spicy. Living in an apartment complex, you know the drill. Parking is always a nightmare, especially visitor parking. Visitor parking in my complex was essentially a myth, a legend whispered about but never actually witnessed in its intended state, empty and available for visitors. It was perpetually occupied by residents, blatantly ignoring the signs and the very concept of visitor parking. This was particularly annoying because my friends would often visit and they'd end up circling the block for ages, sometimes giving up and parking miles away. I complained to management, but they were useless. They'd say, "We'll send out a reminder email," which was about as effective as shouting into the void. So I decided to take matters into my own petty hands. I observed the visitor parking situation for a week, meticulously noting down the cars parked there and crucially who owned them. It wasn't rocket science. It was always the same repeat offenders. Chad in 2B with his oversized pickup truck, Brenda in 4C with her fancy SUV, and so on. Residents plain and simple. My revenge plan was simple, elegant, and perfectly petty. Anonymous, passive-aggressive parking notes. I designed a template on my computer. Professional looking, slightly officious, and dripping with sarcasm. It read something like, "Notice, this vehicle is parked in visitor parking. We understand that resident parking can be challenging. However, visitor parking is intended for, wait for it, madam, visitors. Perhaps consider walking a few extra steps from a resident spot, or dare we suggest utilizing your assigned parking space. Just a thought. Sincerely, concerned residents." I printed out a stack of these notes and armed myself with a roll of tape. Then, under the cover of darkness, it was like 7 p.m., but still, I went on a parking note rampage. Every car parked illegally in visitor spots got a nice, brightly colored note plastered on their windshield. The next morning, the complex parking lot was interesting. I saw Chad frantically peeling a note off his truck, looking around suspiciously. Brenda was muttering to herself as she scraped residue off her SUV window. It was beautiful. And the best part? It worked. For a while at least. People seemed to get the message. The visitor spots were actually vacant. My friends could finally park when they visited. Of course, it didn't last forever. Eventually, the illegal parking creeped back in. But for a glorious few weeks, visitor parking was actually for visitors. And it was all thanks to my army of passive-aggressive parking notes. Petty Revenge Parking Edition, success. Apartment parking is truly the worst, isn't it? Those passive-aggressive notes were absolutely genius. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever dreamed of doing this yourself. Have a great day, and let me know your favorite kind of petty revenge story in the comments.